When we've got all our different contributing factors into a rendering or into a scene, we can start to think about the final balance, balancing the photographic exposure, light values, and global illumination and final gather values. I'm going to go back in my camera 1, back to frame 1, and I'll adjust the photographic exposure value in my scene to get some real richness going. I'll select my camera and press Ctrl A to go to the attributes. One of the things I'll do, incidentally, on photographic exposure is make sure that node is shared between cameras, so all the cameras in a given lighting rig in a scene see that light the same way. What I can do is to scroll down here to the mental ray section, open it up, and there's my photographic exposure node. I'll select it, press Ctrl C for copy, go in my cameras or my outliner and pick camera 2. And in camera 2, I'll paste that in. Down in the bottom in the command line, we can see it says result, connected MIA exposure photographic 1.message to the camera's mental ray control for the lens shader. What it says is the message, send your connection or send your value to this slot. We see a lot of this with mental ray. Message, meaning, hey, talk to him. And now I know that both cameras render with the same photographic exposure controls. What I'll do occasionally as well is go into my perspective camera, select it, and paste in that same control. So if I happen to be in a perspective and wanting to test out the scene in a render, it won't be blown out. It'll use the same tone mapping from that exposure. Now in my camera 1, I'll go and adjust the exposure. I like where it was going, although it needs a little bit of work for a little more punch in it, a little more range. I'll go in that exposure here in the perspective, which really doesn't matter because it's the same node in all of my cameras. I'm going to try running this at an ISO of 100, lowering the sensitivity to light. I'll leave the f at 5.6 and a 64th of a second shutter. It's comparatively slow and somewhat open, so I'm going to let a decent amount of light in. I'll try a quick render and see what I need to adjust. What I can see here already in the final gather is that the change to a lower ISO is helping. I'm getting an overall darker image, and it's really reading better. My dusky sun coming in has a little more punch to it, and I can increase that intensity. Additionally, my walls are a little bit darker, and so any parabolic arcs of light show a little better. I'm going to bring up that sun just a little bit more, and then I'll also bring up the intensity on my spotlights that are in my can lights. I like my chandeliers, but I'm going to let this be a little bit moodier so the chandeliers are on and look bright, but aren't contributing a giant fill light in the room. I'll pause my IPR, bring up my outliner, filter down by showing only lights, and pick my directional light, which I'm going to double-click on right here in the outliner and rename to Sun. I'm going to take up its intensity, bring it up from 160 to 250. Then I'll take all of my can spots and bring up their intensity as well. I'll have to jump to the channel box for this and scroll down to a shape node. There's their intensity at 50, and I'm going to bring it up to 75. When we start to use a lower ISO and our overall image is darker, it means we can push up our lights a little bit more and have a greater range between bright and dark in the interior. For outside scenes, this is going to be very murky, and so we want to use a higher ISO, but for interiors, 100 or 200 works very nicely. If you're working in a composite shot, you may be given an ISO, shutter, and F number, and simply put them in. But if you have a choice about it, start with deeper values and then push up select areas of lights on the inside. Now let my IPR run again. Alternately, to cause a refresh, I'll just drag a new window around it, and this will force it to restart. What I can see in my scene as that IPR finishes is I've got a very nice soft light going. I've got good light coming in from those windows, but it's not overly bright. I've definitely got my interior lights showing, and they're reflecting very nicely in that terrazzo floor. There's good shapes on the left, and I've got balancing darkness in the top left on the image and under the bridge. It's working very well, where I get the idea of a soft dusk or sunset rendering without being overly dark in any one place. In this case, making the architecture look softly lit and very pleasing instead of overly dramatic. Most of the time when we're showing a design like this, we're not after film noir necessarily. We're after softness and romance and mood. We want it to be pleasing so people say, gee, that looks like a nice space to be in, and hence the design gets sold. Now I'll add one more thing to my exposure. I'll press Ctrl A and go into the attributes. and reselect my camera. I like where it's going, and I'll take that exposure and scroll down to the burn highs and crush blacks. I'm going to burn my highs a little bit more, maybe around 0.6, and crush the blacks to 0.55 or so. What this will do is push apart that range a little bit, and I'll turn up the vignetting as well, the circular darkness around the edges. I'll try one more render, and I feel like it's in pretty good shape. It's ready for a final beauty render after I get this done and compositing in post. My rendering is coming through, and pushing those values apart, having a little more burn in the highs and darkness in the blacks, really reads nicely. The little bit of vignetting around the edge also helps, where I get some circular or radial darkness around, and it really reinforces the aperture I've got going. I like where this is headed. I'm ready for ambient occlusion, compositing in post as I mentioned, and to really push the colors that final last little bit, so the rendering really sells as a dusk shot in this lobby.